Hey everybody, this is my 40-gallon Purple Spotted Gudgeon Tank, and it's got a fairly low bioload in it. I've got the Purple Spotted Gudgeon in there. It is a fairly substantial fish, but it's not huge, and all it really gets to eat is about a half a dozen small cichlid pellets every day, and I really honestly don't even throw anything in the tank for the small catfish I have living in the bottom. I have a little bumblebee catfish down there, and I just assume that the 3 or 4 little pellets that the gudgeon misses go to the bottom and the catfish gets them. A lot of times the pellets don't get cleaned up, and I see them sort of break down and deteriorate on the bottom of the tank, and it gets a little messy, and that's actually why I was in there this afternoon. I just finished doing a water change, and I skimmed a whole bunch of duckweed off the surface. You'll see I got quite a collection of it there in my bucket. I didn't trim the plants back or anything, but one thing I did do was test the nitrates. I did a water change on my other 40 breeder, or one of my other 40 breeders, I should say, the tank that I call my 40 breeder. It's got my dwarf pike cichlid in it. And that tank is well planted, but it's planted with very slow growing plants. And the slower a plant grows, the less nitrates it's going to absorb, the less ammonia it's going to absorb, and all of that. It's basically, if it's not growing fast, it's not really using up lots of food and nutrients. That's pretty much common sense. So when you've got fast growing plants, like for example, some swamp weed that's growing up and out of my tank. I've got peace lily back there that keeps sending up new shoots. I've got duckweed all over the surface. I've got this Ludwigia in here that is, I could just pull that stuff out by the handful. I've got so much Ludwigia growing in there. And I just did a water change on this tank, a few weeks ago. It hasn't been any time super recently, but it's been way more recently than when I did the last water change on my other tank. It's also got a canister filter on my other tank, which basically are little nitrate factories. All that crud that collects in there just keeps breaking down and breaking down and breaking down, and over time, that canister filter has all that crud packed in there from months of never being changed. All of that stuff is breaking down and producing ammonia, which ultimately gets taken care of, but the end result should be that you get a lot of nitrates building up. And when I tested the nitrates in that tank, I came out with about 30 parts per million. I couldn't believe it. I tested the nitrates in this tank because I was all smug and was going to be happy to see like 5 parts per million or something like that. And bam, look at that. I've got red nitrates. So again, don't know what it is once it gets to red like that, but that's clearly in the red. We are no longer even questionably near the orange upper end of the almost 40 parts per million. We are well over 40 parts per million there, possibly 60 to 80 parts per million. How? Why? Why is this tank, the one that I expected would have such low nitrates in it? It's got 2 fish in it. It's a 40-gallon tank that's more of an aquatic garden than anything else. And I feed it very lightly because there's only 2 little fish in it. Well, I say 2 little fish. I mean, again, the Purple Spotted Gudgeon is fairly substantial. If you're not familiar with it, you can kind of see him in the back there through all this glare, hiding underneath the power head. It's about 6 inches long. Again, meaty fish, but this is a 40-gallon tank that is planted like this, and I'm not kidding. I feed it these little algae pellets. Let me get one out and I'll show it to you. This fish literally, you can't even see him in my fingers there. This fish literally gets 4 to 6 of those a day, and then maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 of these might miss and fall to the bottom of the tank. And that's how much I feed this tank. And again, we did a water change not a few weeks ago, and we've got that. How? It just baffles me. I'm not worried about it. I don't, nitrates like that aren't a concern. That's still well within the realm of not even going to bother these fish in the slightest. In fact, my plants are probably just loving it. But how? I don't understand how I've got nitrates like that in this. And there's no question about it being source water or anything like that. I've got no other dead animals in there that I know of. I suppose it's a possibility that this tank does have a fair amount of snails in it, and maybe some of the snails die or something. I know snails do produce their own bioload. A lot of people think they don't, but snails do produce waste. You know, they eat algae and then they poop, and that's, you know, that is bioload. So I guess maybe we can count that. You know, I mean, come on though. How many snails can you really see right now? It's not like my tank in my office. My office tank is overrun with snails. That's got so many snails in it, I'm really beginning to think I might have to do something about it. This tank I could probably do with some more snails in there to help keep the algae under control. So I don't think it's snails jacking the bioload up there. You know, I know my catfish is still alive, so it's not like I've got a dead fish in there that's rotting and, you know, jacking the nitrates up. I can't fathom why I've got bright red nitrates. So, you know, that's about all I've got to say. Again, I don't really know why. This isn't a video going, you know, in an attempt to explain that, because I just don't understand it. I really cannot fathom why we're looking at that kind of red color under these circumstances. And I'll double check to make sure I'm not wrong about my water change, but I remember doing the last water change on this. I'm pretty sure I shot a video about it because I got in there and I did all the gravel vacuuming, and I remember how all the roots from all the temple plant are actually coming up out of the substrate, and it's kind of almost like a rooty carpet. I cut back some of the plants that were in there, and none of that could have been more than maybe at the most, I'd say, a month ago, and I don't even think it's been that long. Whereas the other tank that I keep talking about, I honestly don't even remember the last time I got in there and did a water change. It's been several months, and it's got more fish in it. And I feed that tank fairly generously. I put in flake food, I put in sinking pellets, I put in shrimp pellets, and it's got all slow-growing plants. It's all got this Java and Anubias. Everything's really short and stumpy. Nothing in here grows vigorously. I haven't gotten in this tank and cut plants back or trimmed anything back in, well, since I used to have temple plant in this tank a long time ago. It was the last time I had to get in here and trim any plants back. I just don't do that kind of work in this tank because I have such little plant growth. This is not a fast-growing, vigorous tank. You can see a little bit of new growth on the Anubias right there. You know, you can see a few new shoots of the crypt coming up. There's nice bright green ones down in there, but, you know, compare that to what we were just looking at. And yet my nitrates in this tank were about 30 parts per million. So, I don't know. Again, just one of those interesting little, what do you make of this kind of thing? I'd be interested to hear what your comments are. So, thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. And don't forget, the tank we started looking at was my Purple Spotted Gudgeon Tank. That is the tank in question. So thanks again, and I will see you real soon in the next one.